So, guys, the U.S. bounced back after their opening loss to France with a runaway win over Iran. Now it's on to the Czech Republic, who also lost to France and beat Iran after a big game against Iran. Dame Lillard has the highest captain salary on the board at 18,300. Kenny, you looking his way again, or do you like someone else a captain? The next most expensive guy is going to be KD.
Yeah, I think that he could definitely exploit Tomas Saransky's defense, but I actually am looking at Devin Booker. I think he's coming off a really solid game, and we probably were seeing in the first game of the Olympics a little bit of a warm-up here after playing a grueling NBA Finals. So he did only play 19 minutes against Iran, but what he did in those 19 minutes was absolutely spectacular. 16 points, 28 DraftKings fantasy points. We know that this guy can shoot the basketball very well, and I think that he may have earned himself more minutes. It's always a mystery as to what Greg Popovich's rotations are going to be. But again, much like both of the showdowns involving the United States, I really don't want any part of paying all the way up to the top because I want to leave myself some flexibility here to get some interesting names. Maybe one name on the Czech Republic, maybe a guy like Draymond Green who's been pretty consistent. So I don't want to handicap myself in the salary situation. I want to pay down a little bit of captain. I like Booker here against a good matchup.
Nick, do you agree with the way Kenny's playing this? You don't want to pay all the way up?
Yeah, I mean, you can do it if you want, but it's not like the contest that we talked about earlier this week when the USA was going up against Iran, where you could basically just pick whoever you want and then just take a stab at some random Iranian player and try your luck and kind of guess who's going to be in the game when the US is up 40. And that's basically how the game played out. And ultimately, Durant and Lillard, were the two best fantasy performers for Team USA. But, the way that the game script kind of went, it would have been surprising if some deep bench players, ended up being the top scorers. So DraftKings has kind of adjusted the salaries here where you can't just pick the top 5 USA players that you like and then throw some random Czech Republic player in there. There's a little more strategy. So I think Kenny is on the right track. If you're going to pay 17,000 for Kevin Durant or 18,000 for Lillard in your captain spot, you're going to be pretty limited. Even Drew Holiday at 15K has some limitations. So yeah, I think Jason Tatum, Devin Booker, even Bam Adebayo, who was great in the first game, not so great against Iran. I would consider those guys for my captain spot as well.
All right, so Nick, who's a player who would make sense to stack with your captain? You have obviously a lot more options there.
That I think, if you do go down a little bit at the captain spot, that's where you want to plug in, Kevin Durant and or Damian Lillard into that lineup. I think those two guys are by far the highest floor players that Team USA has on this roster. I think that goes without saying. Those guys were both over 30 DK points against Iran in a game that was basically an exhibition, like 10 minutes in. And Czech Republic, the spread on this game is 20 plus. It's expected to be a blowout, but it should be at least a little bit more competitive in the first half. And Lillard and Durant are the type of players that, they only need, 18 to 20 minutes maybe in an international type of game to get their numbers. So if you're going to, save a little money and go with one of those mid-tier Team USA options as your captain, I think you have to go Durant or Lillard to at least begin the non-captain spots.
Kenny, is that your play there, stacking with Devin Booker, Lillard, or Durant?
Yeah, I'm going to have one of those guys. I also have my eyes on Drew Holiday at 10K. Look, he has been one of the best players on Team USA. At least in game 1, he was without a doubt. He's been shooting the ball pretty well in the Olympics. And when you look at the way that this is going to break down, you're looking at two good players, two NBA players anyway, or one who plays in the NBA, one that was drafted in the NBA, Jan Vesley and Tomas Satoransky. You're going to want Drew Holiday out there to guard Satoransky, and you're going to want Bam Adebayo out there to protect the paint against a good, skilled scoring big man. That's why I like both of those guys. I like to look at the good defenders here because I think it's going to keep them on the floor. I know Adebayo only played 13 minutes and, Iran did have Haddadi, but they really didn't need any help there. I think they're going to need a little bit more help here with a closer spread. But I think Drew Holiday is a guy I'm still looking to lock into my lineup along with Booker and along with a high-priced guy like Lillard or Durant. Maybe even both because there is some value here with the Czech Republic.
Okay, exactly. So in a showdown contest, you have to play at least one player from each team. So Kenny, you got to play someone from the Czech Republic. Who's that player, and would you consider playing more than one?
Well, first of all, yes, I am going to play more than one. I think that at least it should be considered. Jan Vesley, 6,000, is the guy that you want to play from the Czech Republic. He obviously was a lottery pick years ago of the Washington Wizards. And bigs have given the Team USA issues here. They just don't have a lot of great big men. Bam Adebayo is the best, but I mean, he's undersized. I think that Vesely could have a good matchup here against Team USA. He could score in the post, and he's been fantastic in these Olympics, coming off a 19-point game against Rudy Gobert and France, and that equated to almost 36 DraftKings fantasy points. I really like him. Another guy I like is Jaromir Boacic at $1,000. He starts for this team. He's played around 22 minutes per game, plays for Starsborg. He's a good player. He can shoot the basketball. And I think that we're going to end up seeing a few threes from the outside because Team USA's perimeter defense might be a little suspect here. And I think that Boacic is a guy that's underpriced, and I would definitely look at playing him. It's only $1,000. To get that many minutes, to get a starter, a player that's pretty good, plays against good competition, is pretty unlikely.
Nick, how do you feel about that? I mean, you got to roster one guy, but would you consider rostering two?
Man, I have so many thoughts on this Boacic pick from Kenny. That's a good call, though. I mean, you have to do your research when you start to look at some of these teams and players that not everybody knows about. Jan Vesely, Tomas Satoransky are the two guys, that most NBA fans at least will be familiar with. Satoransky's been 30-plus DraftKings points in each of his first two games. Vesely, 26 and 36 in his two games. So those are probably your safest options. And I mean, honestly, if you want to get crazy and really differentiate yourself, you could consider captaining one of those guys, saving some money. I mean, there is a roster build where if you captain Jan Vesely, you can still fit Adebayo, Durant, Damian Lillard, JaVale McGee, and Tomas Satoransky in your lineup. So I don't know that I would necessarily advise that strategy, but it is one way to differentiate yourself. But if you're just talking Czech Republic guys to target, Satoransky and Vesely are going to be the two obvious ones.
All right, finally, let's look at the DK Sportsbook, where the U.S. are 23.5-point favorites, and they're minus 3,800 on the money line. So, Nick, how are you going to be approaching this game from a sports betting perspective?
I think you have to start looking at player props, which are fairly reasonable, especially when you compare them to the numbers that you would typically see in an NBA game. And part of that is, some of the rule changes internationally, shorter game. That's the biggest thing. But Damian Lillard is like over under 18.5 points in this game. I think Adebayo is like 8.5 or 9.5 at the DraftKings Sportsbook. And those are all, right around like minus 110 either way. So you can find some value there. I know DraftKings offers a ton of alternative lines in terms of the total in this game. You could basically pick your number where you think it's going to go over under. So I would really dig into all the options on the DraftKings Sportsbook. Probably not a ton of value in betting that minus 3,500 money line or even messing around with the spread that's going to be in the mid 20s by the time the game tips off.
Kenny, what about you? You looking over at the player props?
Yeah, I am. Probably in a little bit of a different area, but I actually think that there's a little bit of value here in Andre Balvin over 10.5 points. He is the starting center alongside Jan Vesely here for the Czech Republic. And again, there's weaknesses down low for the United States. Balvin's coming off an 18-point game against France. The Bigs 8 in that game. And yet another guy that plays on a good international team playing for Bilbao in Spain. So I do think that I watched some EuroLeague, but I do think that these guys are legitimately good, and maybe, it's a GFS play as well at 2,100, but I think that the U.S. has real problems in the front court. I've said it like 5 times in this segment. So I would look at that. And Drew Holiday also over 11.5 points. It is undeniable that he has shot the ball very well in the Olympics. So as long as he's shooting the ball well, I think he's going to be getting the ball. He's going to be going to the hole. He's been playing a lot of minutes. And I expect him to probably push towards like 13, 14 points here with the limited time.